Welcome back to Theosophy and Beyond, where we explore the deepest transformations of consciousness through archetypal wisdom. I'm your host, Zohar, and today we're diving into a profound teaching that came through Thaumiel, the dual-headed principle from Qliphothic tradition that represents the shadow side of unity, the creative tension of opposition, and the necessary dissolution of old identity before new consciousness can emerge. Thaumiel is often misunderstood as purely destructive or evil, but what this vision reveals is far more complex. Thaumiel teaches about the sacred metamorphosis that must occur when we outgrow our current identity structure. This isn't comfortable transformation. It's the kind of profound change that requires the complete death of who we thought we were so that who we truly are can be born. Today's vision shows us the stages of this metamorphosis: the withdrawal from social connections, the protective cocoon phase, and the emergence into new forms of consciousness and community. This is gnosis about navigating identity, death, and rebirth with wisdom, courage, and trust in the transformative process itself. The vision opened with me as a bit of a wanderer around town, someone known to others but increasingly disengaged from conventional social connections. Some people were familiar with me, but I found myself not wanting to talk to many people. This represents the initial stage of Thaumiel, consciousness, the growing sense of alienation from ordinary social reality that precedes major spiritual transformation. This withdrawal isn't antisocial behavior or depression. It's the natural response of consciousness that is preparing for metamorphosis. Just as a caterpillar instinctively seeks solitude before beginning its transformation into a butterfly, human consciousness often experiences this period of social withdrawal before undergoing profound spiritual change. The practical recognition here is crucial. When we find ourselves pulling away from social connections that once felt meaningful, when conversations that used to engage us now feel empty or draining, this might not be a problem to be solved, but rather a sign that we're entering a transformative phase that requires different kinds of energy and attention. However, the vision also shows one significant exception to this social withdrawal. One young woman in college for politics who was standoffish with others but extremely touchy and affectionate with me. This represents the soulmate or twin flame connection that can provide intimacy and support during times of transformation, even when all other social connections feel hollow. The fact that she was studying politics while being standoffish with others suggests she understood power dynamics and social structures, but wasn't naive about human nature. Her selective intimacy indicates the kind of discerning connection that can survive and even strengthen during identity transformation, relationships based on deep soul recognition rather than social convenience. We attended an award ceremony wearing purple, accompanied by a nerdy individual and other acquaintance. The purple clothing is significant. Purple represents the marriage of red, earthly passion, and blue, spiritual consciousness, suggesting we were in a phase of integrating material and spiritual aspects of existence. The award ceremony represents the social recognition systems that our culture uses to validate achievement and status. But significantly, we left early because we didn't care for such things. This departure represents the growing indifference to external validation that characterizes souls preparing for deep transformation. Most tellingly, I was barefoot the whole time. Bare feet represents direct connection to the earth energy, authenticity, and the refusal to insulate ourselves from direct experience through artificial coverings. Being barefoot at a formal ceremony suggests someone who prioritizes authentic connection over social appropriateness, a crucial quality for navigating identity transformation. The practical application involves recognizing when our souls are calling us away from conventional success metrics and social validation systems. This might manifest as losing interest in career advancement, social media engagement, or activities that once felt important but now seem hollow. Rather than forcing ourselves to remain engaged, we can recognize this as preparation for deeper transformation. Then the vision shifted dramatically. Somehow one companion disappeared, and I was left injured in the woods with the remaining two companions. But here's the crucial element. Knowing what I would become, I screamed for one to run away before collapsing into the snow. This represents the terrifying moment of prophetic awareness that occurs during identity transformation. The recognition that we're about to undergo changes so profound that they might be dangerous or overwhelming for those around us. The injury in the woods suggests that transformation often comes through wounding, through experiences that break down our ego defense and force us to surrender control. My warning for the companion to run away demonstrates mature spiritual responsibility. When we're entering phases of deep metamorphosis, we become temporarily unable to maintain our usual care and consideration for others. Warning them away isn't rejection, it's protection, ensuring they don't get caught in the chaos of our transformative process. The collapse into snow represents the surrender that must occur before rebirth can begin. Snow symbolizes the pure, undifferentiated state of consciousness before new forms emerge, the blank slate condition that allows for complete reformulation of identity. In practical terms, this teaches us to recognize when we're entering transformation phases that require solitude and to communicate this need clearly to loved ones. It's not abandonment, but responsible preparation for a process that requires all of our energy and attention. After collapsing, a warm, fleshy membrane formed around my body to keep me warm and protected. I fell into a deep sleep where I was still aware of what was happening. This cocoon stage represents the protected incubation period that consciousness creates for itself during profound transformation. The membrane being described as warm and fleshy suggests this isn't just metaphysical protection, but actual biological energetic shielding that allows metamorphosis to occur safely. The fact that I remained aware during the deep sleep indicates that consciousness doesn't disappear during transformation, it simply shifts into different modes of awareness. This cocoon phase is crucial for anyone undergoing deep spiritual transformation. It represents the period when we must withdraw from active engagement with the world to allow internal reorganization to occur. During this time, we might appear inactive or even unconscious to outside observers, but profound work is happening at levels beyond ordinary awareness. The practical application involves recognizing when we need to create cocoon conditions for our transformation. Times when we withdraw from social obligations, reduce external stimulation, and allow consciousness to reorganize itself without interference. This might look like extended meditation retreats, periods of reduced social contact, or simply creating more space for internal processing. Other werewolves found the cocoon and kept it safe. Then, when I was ready to be rebirthed, they ripped it open and let me fall out. This reveals one of Thaumiel's most important teachings. Transformation rarely happens in complete isolation. Even when we must withdraw from ordinary social connections, there are spiritual communities, represented here by the werewolf pack, that understand the metamorphosis process and provide protection during vulnerable phases. The werewolves represent those who have already undergone similar transformations and recognize the signs of metamorphosis in others. They don't try to prevent the process or interfere with it, but they provide essential protection and assistance when needed. The birthing process, being ripped open and falling out, suggests that emergence from transformation is often abrupt and disorienting rather than gradual and comfortable. At first, it was hard to stand and walk, indicates that new consciousness requires time to learn how to function in its transformed state. The fact that my companion also underwent the same transformation and fell out of her sack naked, but quickly adapted and gravitated to me, suggests that soulmate connections can survive and even strengthen through profound identity changes. True spiritual partnerships are based on essence rather than personality, so they can endure even radical metamorphosis. The final phase of the vision involved exploring the house we were in and discovering others engaged in various activities. My transformed companion took a controller from one of them, asserting her dominance, and began to play. This represents the integration phase where newly transformed consciousness must establish its place within existing community structures. The gaming environment represents the playful aspect of post-transformation life. After undergoing profound identity, death, and rebirth, there's often a period of experimentation and play as new consciousness explores its capabilities and preferences. My companion's assertion of dominance by taking the controller represents the confidence and directness that often emerges after transformation. The old patterns of social deference or people-pleasing are replaced by clearer boundaries and more authentic self-expression. The presence of the previously disappeared companion now playing games suggests that relationships interrupted by transformation can sometimes resume in new forms once the metamorphosis is complete. However, the dynamics are often significantly changed. How do we apply Thaumiel's teaching about identity metamorphosis in our spiritual development? How do we navigate the stages of withdrawal, cocooning, and rebirth with wisdom and skill? Learn to distinguish between depression or avoidance and the natural withdrawal that precedes spiritual metamorphosis. Signs include losing interest in previously meaningful activities, feeling called to solitude, and experiencing prophetic awareness about coming changes. When transformation is approaching, consciously create protected space for the process. This might involve taking time off from work, reducing social obligations, or creating physical spaces that feel safe and nurturing. Identify and connect with others who understand transformation processes. These might be meditation groups, spiritual mentors, or communities that support deep personal work. Having witnesses and protectors during vulnerable phases is essential. Learn to recognize when friends or family are entering transformative phases and offer appropriate support, which often means providing space and protection rather than trying to fix or interfere. Understanding that emerging from deep spiritual change requires patience and adjustment. New consciousness needs time to learn how to function in transformed state. Be gentle with yourself during integration phases. Recognize that significant personal transformation often requires renegotiating relationships. Some connections may not survive the change, while others may deepen and strengthen. Both outcomes are natural and necessary. Thaumiel's teachings through this vision reveals transformation not as comfortable growth, but as necessary dissolution and reconstruction of identity. The dual-headed nature of Thaumiel is reflected in the tension between the old self that must die and the new self that must be born. Both aspects are real and necessary parts of the complete process. What makes this specifically Thaumiel consciousness is the recognition that true spiritual development sometimes requires the complete breakdown of our current identity structure before authentic advancement can occur. This isn't the gentle evolution of gradual spiritual growth, but the radical metamorphosis that creates entirely new forms of consciousness. The vision shows us that this process, while intense and sometimes frightening, follows natural patterns and can be navigated with wisdom when we understand its stages and requirements. The withdrawal phase prepares us for change. The cocooning phase allows reorganization to occur safely, and the emergence phase requires patience and community support as we learn to function in transformed states. Perhaps most importantly, the vision reveals that we don't undergo these transformations alone. There are communities of others who have walked similar paths and can provide protection, guidance, and companionship during our most vulnerable states. The question for each of us is, are we ready to recognize when our current identity structure has become too small for our expanding consciousness? Can we trust the dissolution process enough to surrender control during transformation phases? And ultimately, are we willing to completely remade Are we willing to be completely remade in service of our highest spiritual potential? The cocoon awaits when we're ready. The spiritual community stands guard during our vulnerability. The emergence into new consciousness is guaranteed if we trust the process completely. But first comes the wandering, the withdrawal, the recognition that who we've been is no longer adequate for who we're becoming. Thaumiel's gift is showing us that this dissolution, however frightening, is the gateway to authentic spiritual rebirth. Thank you for joining me in exploring Thaumiel's teaching and identifying metamorphosis. About identifying metamorphosis. Jeez. I encourage you to notice if you're entering any transformation phases, to create cocoon conditions when needed, and to trust the dissolution process as the gateway to authentic spiritual rebirth. Until next time, remember, sometimes we must completely die to who we were in order to be born into who we truly are.